Now, our question and answer videos have been one of the more popular things on the channel. I've got so many popular responses to this and people contributing now worldwide. And I think it's an interesting thing to take a break from our shop work and answer these questions on video. Today, a lot of them are around paintwork. We have some interesting pictures from Romania, from Stefan, and the projects that he's working on. Luciano is finished with his triple 3 bikes into one. We call it the evil triplet. Among other things, Scott is rounding out finishing his RZ tank. Should be done by the time you get to watch this. And just people that have sent in interesting and positive questions. We've learned from the people that have sent in suggestions. Hopefully they have learned something from us. So let's get out to the garage. So today on this video, we're trying to answer some questions that have come into our channel. Some of them regarding motorcycles, some painting, some funny stories, and some pictures from around the world of motorcycling. We have some really nice pictures from Romania today, and I can't wait to get started. We have some interesting questions and a couple of good stories. So the first question is from a gentleman named Satajit. I don't know how to say that. It's not a name I'm familiar with. He probably doesn't know how to say windy either, so I guess we're even. Anyway, he gave me a great idea, and I thought I'd share a little bit of information now, but make a separate video later. And this is something other people have alluded to, and I've kind of glossed over it. It's on my bucket list of things to do, but I really haven't had time to do it with these now four big restorations in the shop at one time. Anyway, I'm going to try to answer his question simply, but it is not a simple 2 or 3 word answer, but this is good information, good basic painting information. Now, what he wanted me to do, and I thought, we could do this, it's not a problem at all. Next time I go to Harbor Freight, I'm going to pick up an extra spray gun. I'm due for a new one anyway. And I wanted to do the unboxing, show what comes in the box, how to set up the pressure fitting, what pressures to use, how to adjust the pressure. So, like the basic 101s, but the big thing he wanted to know, and this eludes a lot of people, and I don't know why they do it. Why it eludes people. What happens with a spray gun when you're new to it and you're not familiar with it? You buy it out of the box, and it's a good idea. The paint control, nothing else. Now, one knob, and I'll show this in detail, but this is the trick. The big thing to get right is the needle that goes in and out of the nozzle, and is usually a knob. Where do you put that? When you're new to painting, that's kind of a tricky thing to do. It's like jetting an RD. If you've never had dirt bikes and stuff, you're not familiar with jetting and pilot jets and everything. But anyway, I'm going to show this. I'm going to make a separate video for sure. But this is the information. What I do, I get the gun, get it all set up, put the paint I'm going to use for that day, and it's a good idea. A new gun, run some thinner through it first. A lot of times there's cutting oil or something when they machine the parts. But put that needle all the way in till it won't come out anymore. Then back it out 1.5 turns. Put a little mark on it with an ink marker so you know where it is. That's a good starting point. That's not the ultimate point, but that's a good starting point. Put the paint in, get a light bulb is a good thing, a fluorescent light, a tin can, something to paint and look at the spray. And if it's all dry and it looks like 80 grit sandpaper, you probably have the thing set. You probably, more than likely, you have it way too rich. Let's call it rich, too much paint coming out. If you put the nozzle in a little bit, it's going to get better and better and better to the point where it puts a nice smooth finish out. Then at some point you're going to go in and in and in, and it's going to get, you can't cover anything. It's like, it comes out like powdery. And well, at that sweet spot right in the middle, on most of the guns that I have, you're very close to it 1.5 turns out. It changes as the material gets thicker and thinner. So 1.5, just the starting point. But get used to what it looks like when it's too rich, what it looks like when it's too lean, just like jetting a bike, and what it looks like when it's just right. Now, what most people have asked me, why don't they just make a spray gun with the right setting right from the factory? Because there is no right setting. It's like for different shop conditions, My shop is relatively cold, and I paint outdoors when it's 40 degrees out, 30 degrees, whatever. Under certain conditions, that knob has to richen up the mixture. Under really hot conditions, it's got to go in. Like the tire pressure on your bike changes with the temperature. And some people don't realize that. You can't make, not that I know of, a spray gun that does not have an adjustable nozzle. So getting used to adjusting that nozzle if you're new to painting, that's really step one. And you might waste a little bit of paint doing it, but it's a good idea to practice. And just buy the gun, get it all set up, go out in a turn and a half, at least with the Harbor Freight ones, and do a little practice and where you're happy. And if you're too close, the paint's going to splatter all over the place. If you're too far away, and there's no paint's going to get on it. Knowing how far away to put the gun, again, good information. And there's no substitute for just practicing that I've ever found in my life. And in the time that I painted my airplanes, there was just no, I painted a lot of planes for other people just for the practice of getting used to how the material handled under different conditions. And in the end, that practice always pays. Two things pay when you're learning how to paint. Be patient and practice. And that trick with the gun of starting at 1.5 turns out, I will be doing a video, I hope, within the next, once we get these restorations done anyway. Because Vlad is really looking forward to getting these done, and I'm looking forward to getting them done. And the riding season is already here. So it's a win-win-win. But anyway, that was a good question, and we will be following up on it. Some pictures sent in from our good friend in Romania, Stefan, and of course we know him best from the track bike. He had a Triumph track bike, among others. And he took his Super Tenere and he made some motard wheels. Had some really custom wheels made up for it. Now, I've been going back and forth with him all winter, and they've had terrible snow, so he hasn't ridden a lot. But what a great time to work on a bike and to do this kind of work. That sometimes it takes months to do it, or you have waiting for parts to come back. He eventually got them back, though, and so I was real happy to see that he's out riding already, and he had a nice ride already. Spring is sprung in Romania, and he's got the snow all melted. He said they had a lot of snow. He went out for a ride with his girlfriend, who has it's like a Tracer, an MT-07, and she took these pictures, and thank you very much for contributing. Always nice to see what's going on in Romania. Okay, we had a good question from a gentleman named Buddy. He watched the polishing engine video, and he was wondering, how do you get in between the fins and polish it? Well, that's a good question. Now, I have tried a couple of things that have worked well. Jose turned me on to a couple of these things, and Turbo Steve had a couple of good ideas of using a long stick paintbrush to get into places, to clean them. That's the first thing. Then if you take a paint stick, an ordinary paint stirring stick you can get in Lowe's for free if you buy a gallon of paint, and wrap a microfiber around it and put some compound or cleaner or even 8065, and you can work one slot at a time. You can clean them up. I'm not sure you can make them look like chrome, but what I like to do is the edge of the fins. And the edge of the fins you can do very easily, and I've got this on the videos many times, is get some, I'm just going to take a wild guess, 1000 grit paper, sand that smooth. Then take some 1500 paper, sand it, then some 2000 grit, and then buff it. And you'll see on the GS, it's on some of the polishing videos, and there's quite a few of them, getting that edge shiny, it really makes a difference. The RD has polished edges too. That's a good question, but that stick to get in and wrap the microfiber around the stick, or the paintbrush, or what my favorite trick is, and when I show people this, a lot of people go, oh, why didn't I think of that? I turn my compressor up to 125 pounds. I have a long tube on the end of the air gun. I made it myself. It's no big deal. Just, you can probably buy one in Harbor Freight the same. And I can get in between the fins and where the head gasket joins, and there's usually some goop in there, especially on older bikes. They drip and drool a little bit. Clean it up. Now, another trick I learned years and years ago, I had a bike that leaked at the head gasket. And just enough that it was annoying. Now, it didn't leak that the bike didn't run right, but about every 1,000 miles, there'd be a goop in there. Well, I took some Simple Green when the bike was cool. Put a little Simple Green in there, and took that same thing, the stick with the rag, cleaned it out, and then high pressure air. And of course, you got to do that every so often, or in some cases, you got to fix it and put a head gasket in. May have to do that at some future time. But anyway, I've never had the bike not run right, so I'm not going crazy about it. And it's one of the things, when you maintain things and keep them clean, they never get to the point where they're a dumpster, and you look at it and go, oh, God. As long as you keep after it, especially the back wheel. If you don't clean the back wheel for a long time, when you go to clean it, it's a nightmare. But if you clean it like I do every maybe 3 or 4 times you ride the bike, or I wipe the bike down every time I ride it, it's a relatively simple couple minutes and it's clean. And then every time you ride the bike, it's reasonably clean. Oh, I take a lot of pride in having a clean bike, especially the back wheel and especially the motor. I've posted up many videos of how to do it correctly, how to do it easily, how to steam clean a motor, how to steam clean wheels. But I just keep after it so it never gets so bad that I'm not inclined to do it. Constant maintenance. A good painting question from Jeff. And this, he put a comment on the channel that was a couple paragraphs long, and it was good information. And he was explaining how if you put a black part of the bike black and part white and a color stripe in between, or you have it yellow and black, put a white stripe in between, how important that is in laying out a paint job. And he was very complimentary about it, and I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate all of the stuff. But the way I learned, and I didn't go to school to do it, this is all self-taught stuff. What I learned is I made a bunch of model planes that I thought they looked decent. A lot of them not so good. Sometimes I'd put a few too many stripes on. Sometimes I'd put a few too many colors on. But as you get more and more experience, it's the same thing as when you want to learn how to spray. Just buy some old paint or use up old paint. You'll get it. It's just a question of time. And learning the basics of anything. Once you learn to, like a spray gun or like lay out a paint job, I do a lot of concept sketches. The concept sketches let me see what things are going to look like. An example, this helmet. This white stripe with the purple stripe and the purple in the middle, I laid this all out ahead of time. And then when I painted it, I had some idea what it would look like. And that's a good idea too, is to use concept sketches, and especially when you're not sure what that's going to look like. Now, in the back in the model airplane days, what we always used to laugh about is you look at trailer trucks going by, and some back in the day, and this is about 20 years ago, the trailer trucks had some pretty cool paint jobs on. Now I think not so much, but back in the day there were some pretty cool trucks going by, and you'd say, wow, that would look great on a model plane or something. And you'd steal their little paint job. Or in the days when, and I used to paint Harley Davidsons all the time, and when I had the old shop, they wanted flames all the time. They wanted the same thing over and over again, so it never really got my juices flowing. But once you start and you design your own paint job and you do it with a sketch, then when you actually get it done and you look at the sketch and how it came out, I have a feeling you'll be pretty impressed and pretty happy. Now, this is one example of what he's talking about. That FZR logo, John was the primary force behind designing that. That's a unique, one-of-a-kind logo. I laid out all these stripes which taper. Every one of those colored stripes taper from back to front, and they don't taper. It's not something you could do with a computer because they're not on a flat surface. You've got to do it all by eyeball. I made many videos of covering how I laid this out in a cold garage. Over this restoration took 900 hours. But every time I go out to the garage or I put this bike out on the open road, I look back and I think every one of those hours was well spent. Another painting question from CHOWA. Again, some of the names I'm not real comfortable saying. I don't want to make something sound funny. It's not. Trying to be respectful, but I do appreciate the comments. And I appreciate them most when somebody really does want to know stuff, because the passion that they have to want to know and to want to spend some time learning, it's priceless. Anyway, he asked me about primer, and he wanted to know about painting, and I believe the question was, because I had just taken notes, he wanted to paint some plastic, and he said, do you really have to use Bulldog? Well, I've used it in the past. Doesn't seem to hurt anything. I've done it without Bulldog. I like this is the golden rule. If it's a piece of plastic, you get the primer that says self-etching primer. If you're painting metal and you're down to bare metal, you want to prime it as soon as possible, because it's only a matter of a minute and it starts oxidizing. If you take some steel and you grind it to bare metal and get it wet, the next morning when you come out, it's rusty. So the trick is with metal, prime it as soon as you can with self-etching primer. And getting the right primer on a job is a big part of any job. It's not a small little inconspicuous thing. Now, of all the people that send in questions, and I know the people, I think 99% of them, I'm just making a number up because I really don't know, are able to look at the video and do the task that they want to do. And that's the purpose of the channel. If you couldn't do that, what would be the purpose of having this channel? It would just be a photo show. Simon, he looked at the video of recovering the seat, went out and recovered his own seat. Simon. And there's more than one person had sent that comment in. So I think that video might have been really, really worth it. And I noticed we got thousands of hits on that video. So I'm very impressed, and we'll make, every time we have to do a seat, we'll upgrade it with more modern information, or we learn about different things. In the first one I ever made, I didn't really know about the heavy-duty staples. And then when I posted the video, somebody sent me a question about why don't I use heavy-duty staples. Well, I didn't know about them. But that's the way, that interaction back and forth, if I can help you and you can help me, that's what the comment section of the videos is for. So Simon, congratulations. I love to hear that, by the way. Now, Tom, I know exactly how this feels. He dropped his bike, not crashed it. It was a drop going out of the driveway or something. He said it was a low speed and he just, whatever. But all he did was scratch up the mirrors. And he's restoring the bike. I'm not restoring it. It is already restored. He wanted to match the finish on the mirrors. And well, the mirrors are typically flat black. That's easy to match. But you still, if you're not sure, a good way to do it is go to AutoZone, has a good choice, and buy. They have 3 or 4 different kind of flat black. Some is for brake calipers, some is for engines, some is for barbecues. And the cans are $3 to $5 each. So buy all 4 of them, do a little test on a light bulb or something, and see which one matches before you paint the mirrors. And he watched the video painting mirrors where I did them gloss black, and he didn't want gloss black. Now, Tom, I prefer shiny mirrors, believe me. I don't like, especially when you have to clean the bugs off them. When they're glossy, but when they're flat black, you're grinding away, and I don't know, somehow they just don't look exactly the same. Anyway, that's a good way to do it. And again, congratulations, Tom, on ultimately getting the job done perfectly. Now, a good example of that is my good friend Dallas out in Sacramento. He has shared many good tips about the GS, including that you can swap the front rotors for the back to save some weight. And I've shared some information with him, and his wife actually made me an apron for my cooking with Karen. Thank you, Dallas and Nancy. Always good stories. I never get sick of hearing stories, especially people tell me about their adventures way back in the day. Now, a fellow named Randy, this email made my day. This comment made my day complete. He bought an 88 GS 1100 ES, a little different model than what I have, and he was laughing when I said I have almost 77,000 on mine, and I've worn out one speedometer already. I have a second speedometer on there. He has 90,000 on his. He says it fits like a glove, it runs like a freight train, and he sees no other reason to even go shopping for another bike. And I know a lot of people like that because they don't like the look of modern bikes, the spaceship look or whatever you want to call it. They like the traditional, I can see the motor, like what a normal bike of the 80s would be, and it has certain characteristics, a big comfortable seat for one, not a little. So Randy, that made my day complete. And Lucas, L-U-K-A-Z, Lucas, I guess that's how you say it. And he was born in 1982. This, again, made my day complete. There's always funny stories with motorcycles. He says he was watching the When Men Were Men video that I posted, and he said it was a great time to own a motorcycle. I'll tell you, it was a great time to own any motorcycle, not only a GS. Back, if you're a young guy, and you're a young guy would be anybody less than 77, and you know what it was like in the 80s to own a motorcycle. Oh, when they came out with the 4-cylinder Honda and the H1 Kawasaki and the, oh my God, all those FZRs and everything that they had. That was a great time. The motorcycles were changing by the day, and oh my God. It's like cars. If you love 50s cars, the Buick was different than the Oldsmobile and different than the Dodge, and oh, they had the Ram and the Hemi, and now they have, every car looks like like my wife's Jetta. You park it in the lot and you look, dun, 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 and you can't even, if they're all black, you can't even tell until you look at, oh yeah, that's our car. I don't know. Motorcycles had a golden age, and in my opinion, it was around the 80s somewhere. And as soon as they got into the real super high performance bikes that really were uncomfortable to ride, but back in the 80s, the bikes had to be fun to ride. They had to be comfortable, and it was very competitive, the quarter-mile times. A great time to be alive. Now, when we went to Black and Gray Honda, and that's a great video on my channel, just look up Black and Gray. We went there twice already. Everybody argues the point, what was the golden age of motorcycling? Was it the 80s, the 90s? Is it now? Was it the 50s? I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. But for me, it seems like the bikes of this era, when these bikes were new and you could just go to the dealer and buy one. In that era, so I was younger then, of course, motorcycling had a really magnetic draw to me. I really wanted to own them all. And now later in life, I've managed to put my humble collection together, but there's still some I'd like to have. And some of the guys have kept them stock. Some have made them drag bikes, but one and all, they're all jewels. Right now is a great time to be alive. When I think of that MT-09, how much fun I've had with my MT-09. And I always say, modern bikes, I always kind of allude to the fact I like the older bikes. But boy, when I bought the MT-09, it changed my whole outlook on life. Anyway, now another perfect question, Victor. And I love questions like this because I can answer them very easily. And I know this is an answer that's very useful to know. For me, anyway, it was. He has an FZR 600. He wants a custom look, and he wanted to know, what would I do if I had an FZR 600? Well, to me, if you want to customize a bike, my MT-09 is a good example. You want to make a bike your bike. It isn't everyone is exactly the same. So you want to customize it. Well, a lot of people do things when they customize a bike. I'm not so sure about. But the biggest thing you can do to make a bike custom, one of a kind, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is paint it. Painting it costs maybe $200 for the paint. And you can do the whole thing over the winter, buff it out and put whatever custom colors and stripes like this. And in the spring, you've got a bike, nobody else has one just like it. And you didn't have to go to the bank to borrow money against your house or anything. It's a relatively inexpensive thing. Choice two, to customize a bike, to make it your own, one of a kind, whatever you want to call it, is paint the wheels. That's a labor-intensive thing, and I've posted every set of wheels I've done is on our channel. But the thing is, it changes the whole look of a bike in one stroke of a pen. One stroke of a pen, and it's changed. So, anyway, a fellow named Brad, as we go through the questions, and his question is, he wanted to paint his wheels, and I told him this was the thing to do. He didn't want to spend all the time sanding all the old finish off. Now, I do it because I'm a fanatic. Now, I'm sure other people have painted right over the old paint and had really good results. I've even seen YouTube videos, people that paint over the old paint. There's a person on YouTube that I envy. He painted, the wheel was on, this is true, the wheel was on the bike. He put it on a center stand, never even took the tire off, back masked nothing, and spun the wheel and painted it, and then took acetone and wiped the paint off the tire. And to be honest, if that floats your boat, that's okay too. But any level of quality you decide works for you, and doing the wheels is a big thing, no matter how you do it. But my answer to Brad was, if you're going to do it that way, I would suggest you'll sand everything with 400. Just sand as much as you can, or get the brake disc soft so you can get in by the hub. Get it rough, get it super clean, super clean. Use up a half a gallon of degreasing agent, clean and dry, and put self-etching primer on. Even though normally I would say use the other primer, self-etching primer on a wheel is probably a good idea. Because when you go to mount your tires, if you do it my way, where you cut the old tire off and put it on without tools, but a lot of people, they put it on a tire machine, all of a sudden there's a big gouge in it. And it's just me. I like the time I put into my custom wheels. I don't want to take any chance that I'm going to scratch them. I'd rather spend a little time doing it the old-fashioned way. It takes an extra 15 minutes. But in the end, you know, there's no chance you're going to scratch the rim. And that's posted, by the way, on our channel many times. You look up Wendy Ertnowski in quotation marks, or if you're on the channel, just put tire changing, and up will come probably 20 videos. Anyway, now many of Luciano's restorations, including his evil triplet, which I had the joy of riding not long ago, he's painted right over the old paint, just etched it up and painted right over it, and it came out well. Another good question, good paint question here. I got to spell these names because I don't want to embarrass somebody. I don't want to embarrass myself because I don't know how to say the name. Satyajit. And apparently we have a lot of people overseas that enjoy these videos. Thank you for the nice responses. He said, do I ever put thinner in my clear? One word answer, no. I adjust the gun of what we talked about on the first segment. If you're in a cold environment, that needle is going to have to come out. If you're in the middle of sunny California at 100 degrees, the needle's going to go in. That's why they have a needle, but I never resort to thinner. Thinner is not, some people do, I know you can, and I know, but I've never done it, and I've never had a problem because I didn't do it. So I don't like to fix things that aren't broke. Now, a fella named Bill, we had a lot of paint questions today. Surprised I could paint in cold weather. And I told him, yeah, you can. There's a couple of downsides. The downside is you freeze. Your hands get cold. The gun can stick to your hand if it's really cold. But the real downside is that paint that you just put on, all paint is made to be dried in a 72 to 70 degree environment. It's not made to dry at 90 degrees and not made to dry 50. At 90, it's going to dry real fast, and sometimes you lose your chemical adhesion. What I do, it takes longer to dry, but you get a tremendous chemical bond. So I trade away that it sits in a garage for a day, maybe even 2 days. And what you do is, when you want to know if it's dry, if it's outgassed, smell it. And if you don't smell paint, it's done. Bring it in the house. Sometimes for me, that can take 2 or 3 days. Sometime in the summer, when I've painted things in the summer, the next day they're ready to go. But again, temperature controls how quick. All epoxy, all things that have a hardener, anything with part A and part B, temperature affects how quick it dries. If you take 5-minute epoxy and make one puddle of it, and I make a puddle over here and hit it with a hairdryer, just get it warm to the touch, 125 degrees. This is going to kick off twice as fast as that. And the opposite side of that, if you want to take longer for something to dry so you can trowel it out and do other things, do it in a cold environment. Turn the air conditioning on in your house, or go into a cold room or a place. Temperature affects dry time for a lot of chemicals, and paint and epoxy are too. Now, our friend Scott out west has just gotten this bike. He's going to start a new project, a new restoration on this. He got rid of the V-Star, didn't like that. We're going to see how this comes out. Now, a fellow named Cooper, he asked a question that makes sense. He wants to put he watched it recovering the video of seat cover, and he wants to put it over the old cover. And I said, yeah, that I've done that. But for sure, you want to use the longer staples and make sure you really get your fingers on there so that they go in. Of course, they're going to be going through 2 layers of vinyl. So longer staples, I have done that. It's worked fine for me. Usually 3/8 staples would be my choice. 1/4 inch if you're doing 1 layer. Sometimes you want to use 3/8. It depends. That nylon base of the seat for most motorcycles, even Ducatis that are a different material than the Japanese bikes, that plastic, you really have to press down on that. And yes, I have a pneumatic staple gun, but I haven't found it necessary. And I always think that's overkill to be putting those staples in, because when you go to get them out, you're going to be breaking your fingernails and pliers and everything. So 3/8 heavy duty staples, if it's 2 covers, 1/4 inch if it's 1. And I've done probably a dozen seats or so with Luciano and with Joe Padula and everybody. In our group of the A-team, everybody I know had a Mark Morgan, freshly covered seat. Anyway, this is a wonderful story, and motorcycling is so full of these type of stories. A fellow named Richard shared this. His grandfather was a Yamaha dealer in Georgia who just passed away. So he decided to get, it inspired him to get his 400 RD running again, and he's doing a full restoration, getting it running. He wants to get it back on the road as a tribute to his grandfather. If you only knew, now, I have told this story before on video, but my dad died in 1954. I was a young guy. And he had at that time a BMW. He was a BMW rider. And he bought it from Amel Precision. And Oscar from Amel Precision came and bought the bike for my mother. But to have that bike back now, if I could get my hands on one that was restorable as a tribute, wow. Wow. But I know those bikes go for big money. I don't even dream about it. I don't have the ambition at this point in my life to start multiple restorations. I have 4 of them in the shop right now. Another thing, a fellow named Sean watched the Flitz video, and he said he's going to be trying it. He's got some parts to polish. Now, keep in mind, Flitz is a great product. I've reviewed it. If you look on my channel and just put the word Flitz, you'll see I did an extensive test on aluminum, paint, everything. The thing with Flitz to remember, it's not rubbing compound. It's not polished. What you have to do is start with a polished surface, because it's 6,000 grit, and use their buffing, that big orange buffing wheel on an electric drill, and you can get that what'll come up even with 8065. You can put an even better gloss on it, which I do to a lot of my parts. And also what it does with aluminum, it leaves supposedly 6 months of protection, so it doesn't oxidize, or in the case of paint, you ride on a salty, where I do in the winters with the salt, it can ruin the paint. But anyway, that Flitz is a good product, and you should look up not only my video, some of the other videos that show you how to polish aluminum, polish brass with that. It's a good product. But again, it's not made as rubbing compound. Don't think of it as rubbing compound. It's there to put a final finish on things. Now, Scott from Connecticut has done a really beautiful job with his RZ. He did the whole motor. He rebuilt the oil pump. We've been corresponding back and forth. When he was doing the engine, he had the barrels off, and he had just unlimited amounts of stuff that he was doing to the engine. Got it all back together. We had a great get-together up by Perry's, and we went for this ride where I shot some pictures for my collection and did some run-bys and some various other things. But he shared some of the tricks he was using to polish things, and from looking at the bike in real life, I can tell you he's a meticulous person. But he's doing that tank now, and he's on the final steps of doing the tank, and I can't wait to see a picture of it. It's going to look better than new when he's done. And now here's another guy. I love this video, and I hope I'm not saying I'm really in name city here today. Armadillo. If I've said anybody's name wrong, I'm really sorry. All my life I've lived with people who couldn't say my name right. He watched the Motion Pro bead breaker video, so he went and bought the Motion Pro bead breaker. It's a $50 tool. It breaks the bead real good. He went back and he said, I was really having trouble. It didn't work the way it should. He was having all kind of issues. I was thinking it's that video's a fake or whatever. He went back and watched the video the second time. He said the tire came right off. Now, what he might have forgot to do is put the Windex around, or soapy water, or Dawn, anything. Anything that's capillary, because as soon as you break the bead even a little bit, what happens if it's dry, it goes right back and attaches itself. So even if you're using the Harbor Freight one, put some Windex around it, it'll make getting it off a lot easier. Now in my case, and always keep this in mind, if you have custom wheels, even if you have powder coated wheels or stock wheels, the way taking the old tire off does way more damage than putting a new tire on. That's why I've resorted to, whenever I have really, I'm hesitant, especially if you have tires that are hard carcass, Dunlop, some Pirellis like the Angels, you'll chew up a wheel so bad by the time you get the tire off. But I've resorted to just cutting them off, and I've shown that on video in the past. So just look up my channel and just put tire changing. Don't scratch your wheels. And the Motion Pro bead breaker works great. Now, one final really funny story. This is Karen's friend Marianne, and she's in her early 70s. She's a bachelorette, and she had gotten a dating site. She'd gone to a dating site, and she wasn't having a lot of luck. And I said, what you need, Marianne? You need a picture of you like a biker chick. So we're going to doctor up some pictures. So what I did, I spent the day with her, and I told her, put on all black clothes, and you know, so you can look real mean, and maybe we could get some of those fake tattoos or something too. She didn't have any fake tattoos, so anyway, Marianne, we took all these photos. She put them on a dating site, and she met a guy with a 3-wheel Harley, who's now her best friend. So that is a true story too. And the world of motorcycling is a very eclectic thing, and whether you like motards or Harley Davidsons, RZs, well, you like them all. See, I'm addicted. I like them all. The world of motorcycling is something very special. You can pick from it what you want. You can hang out with people who have bikes exactly like yours, or have an eclectic collection like I do. And some friends that do everything from go to bike shows like Turbo Steve, and Henry Hawk, who sends me pictures every day from on the road with his Guzzi. And just the array of friends that you have. Everybody seems to like a different type of bike in my circle of friends. And people like Luciano like them all. People like Turbo Steve have a very eclectic collection. And no matter what part of it you like, there's always room for another bike in the garage, except in my garage. I don't know. I think I've kind of maxed out. Now Vlad's got a great collection. Stephen Walker in Australia. And all these people have contributed things. Some more of Vlad's bikes. They've all contributed something into my enjoyment. And Joe Roselli, thank you for those great photos on the aluminum. The night photos. Everybody's got some. There's Vlad's F4. There's just something for everybody. And go visit that black and gray Honda. Just my name and put up black and gray Honda. What a collection. Speaking of collections. But whatever you collect, just ride it like there's no tomorrow. And thanks so much for watching.